Welcome everyone to another episode of Play It Through, and on this edition it's City Connection, brought to us by Jaleco. City Connection is a port of the arcade game from 1985. City Connection has you playing as a driver who has to go through each of the cities and drive over each part of the different roads. In order to complete a stage, you must drive over each part of the road on each of the several levels while dodging various obstacles. In the NES version of the game, there are 7 levels for you to conquer, and then the levels will repeat. You can play the game 1 or 2 players. We're going to be playing 1-player mode in this, and it's alternating lives when you're playing in multiplayer mode. Now, when we start the game, you can see the control of our car is pretty actually accurate. You have some really cool motions that the car can do when you're turning left and right in order to drive on the road. Of course, this being an arcade game, you can see the roads aren't very traditional by any means, and there are various obstacles for us to try to dodge and get away from, including the other various police cars. There are also cats that like to set up on the roads themselves, and running into them will also cause you to lose a life. In order to deal with the other enemy cars that are on the road, you'll have to pick up oil cans and then use those oil cans to throw at your enemies, and that will cause them to start spinning and you can knock them out of your way. The hardest thing to get used to in City Connection is getting those last little bits of road on each of the levels, doing tight turns so that you can quickly hit the edge and then keep going to the next platform. Once you drive over every square inch of the level, you will complete it and move on to the next level after getting a bonus for how much oil you actually had left at the end of that stage. The second level has us traveling across the Atlantic Ocean over to London. Now, what's cool in the game is the level designs are the same for the 7 levels, though there is a bonus item you can collect. There are red balloons that will sometimes appear. Collecting 3 random balloons will actually move you ahead a few cities, basically just changing the background, but the level will remain the same. It also grants you a ton of bonus points, so you're going to be wanting to look out for that. However, in this run of the game, we're going to be trying to avoid those balloons, as we just want to do a more traditional run showing each of the backgrounds and stages. When jumping in the air, it can be hard and difficult to actually turn your car back around, so you have to get used to the whole weight and physics of the car, which is actually pretty unique for this game. After a bit of practice, though, you should have no problem being able to make the really tight turns on the very edges of platforms and then be able to jump over to another platform and continuing your streak. Usually what I like to do is, of course, start at the very top, as you have noticed, and work my way down, taking care of all the top platforms, and then next level down, and so on and so forth until I'm on the very bottom level, usually leaving that for last, unless I have to drive a little bit of it in order to reach some of the smaller platforms. The third level of City Connection has us traveling to Paris. At this point, you should be getting used to the placement of enemies and the way they spawn, which is completely random. Sometimes you can drive on a road and then turn around real quick and come back, and all of a sudden that enemy has either disappeared or even changed. For example, at that top part of the screen where I had one of the cats randomly appear on me. There are good and bad things to this, though. Because the enemies do spawn kinda at random, you can sometimes manipulate them in order to kinda get them to disappear real quick if you need to go over a very specific part of the stage, but there happens to be a cat there. Just quickly turn around, make sure the cat is off screen, and then come back and hopefully he has gone away. Other times, you may just have to jump over a cat and then come back from the other direction to hit the pieces of land that the cat was occupying. While there are only 7 locations in the NES version, there are actually 12 locations to travel to in the arcade version. One of the other big differences between the arcade and NES version is actually the main character. In the Japanese version of the game in the arcade, you're playing as Clarice from Honda City. And in the North American version of the game, you're playing as, well, a generic male character. City Connection was a very early NES title, but I thought a pretty faithful port of the arcade game at the time. Even though it did feature less levels and all, I always thought it at least replicated the gameplay, which is of course the most important part. We move on now to the next level, the 4th level of the game. This level, though, is always a bit tricky because of the background being the way that it is. It's a little bit bright, and because of that, it can be kind of hard to see some of the pathways that you're traveling along. Like always, I'm doing my best to kind of manipulate myself on the platforms to cover all of the ground before moving down to the lower sections. Always having plenty of oil at my disposal to make sure if any car gets in my way, I can immediately take them out. The designs of some of the later stages can be very difficult to actually be able to even get up to some of the areas with them, making the right jumps so you can go from platform to platform or even jump up at certain platforms. You have to keep your distance of your car a pretty good length away and kick up speed in order for you to make jumps. Like right here, it was a little bit difficult to get up there, and even when I did, there was a cat waiting for me, so I had to do a quick turnaround to get back down. Here I can finally build up enough speed to finally hit that last little bit and move on to the next level. The next stage is a Russian-themed stage you can see from the architecture of the buildings in the background. But of course, even with the change of scenery, our plan is going to remain the same, usually taking out the top level and the level right below that as I make my way over before taking out the bottom 2 levels of the stage. City Connection unfortunately went largely forgotten for many years, but there was a sequel made, unfortunately only for mobile devices in Japan, called City Connection Rocket, which featured the same kind of gameplay but added some new power-ups. The last hazard that I haven't really talked about much is the spikes. Now, these won't get to you if you're very quick when going along pathways. However, if you drive on one level for a long period of time, spikes will appear to take out your vehicle, so you have to be always cautious of driving on the same level for a long time. The next level up is a level based on Japan, as you can see from the backgrounds, including even Mount Fuji peeking out of the treetops in the very far back. Thankfully, the color scheme on this level and the way the sky is lit up, you can see the pathway a lot easier than a few levels ago. The level design overall on this level is usually pretty easy for me to deal with, because there's some really nice long pathways on the first and second levels. So this allows me to cover them quickly, manipulating just a bit to watch out for cars, and mainly the cats, of course, trying to get into my way, before reaching down to the bottom part. Always hitting those very edges can be tricky, but I like to cover them all and then just jump right over to the next platform before I go down to the bottom level. There's usually a good amount of oil to be able to grab, and I can jump up here and cover this last platform before finishing on the very bottom of the road. At the end of this level, though, we get to see one last picture of kind of the character looking off into the sunset. I always like to see this as pretty much him reaching the end of his journey, because the next level picks right back up in New York. However, this is our 7th level, so the design of the stage is actually different than the first time we were in New York. The level designs don't match the background from here on out, so they kind of mix it up so it seems like you're in new, different levels, because the whole level design is different, and the backgrounds are the same. At this point, of course, your goal is to just try to get as high of a score as possible, keeping a hold of oil cans so you can rack up bonus points, and finding those red balloons so you can grab them, fast forward a few backgrounds, but get a big point bonus in the process. Finishing up the last layer before going down to that very bottom and finishing up the stage. Now from here on out, the level designs will start to repeat, but because the backgrounds are different, it'll kind of feel like it's a new experience in a way, because the background and level designs are different. However, we've now seen all of the levels in the game, and with that though, that's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving a thumbs up or commenting down below. It's amazing how those little things actually do help this video get seen by more people. If you enjoyed this arcade game, you may want to also check out my playthrough for another arcade classic, Burger Time, located right over there by clicking that link. And of course, I want to give a huge special thank you to all the members of my Patreon. You guys are keeping this channel alive each and every month by being a member. You can check out my Patreon by clicking the big Patreon button down below, and there's plenty of cool incentives for being a member of my Patreon. Basically, your pledges as low as $1 a month is going to keep this channel going. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoy.